Hello and welcome to Microsoft Hates Greg. My name is Greg Deckler, and today we're going to be going behind the scenes with Fabric, particularly OneLake, and taking a look at it and with a handy kind of tool called OneLake File Explorer. So OneLake File Explorer, as you can see on the screen, you can go out here to this URL and you can download it and install it, and then you will get this will appear over here. Now, initially, of course, it's Fabric, it won't work. So in order to make it work, you need to reboot, or you need to go here to your search and go to OneLake, and you fire it up and run the application, and then it'll work. So once it's working, right, now we can kind of peek behind the scenes of what's going on with OneLake. And you remember in my last like 2 videos ago, I was talking about like, well, what is Fabric content? And it appeared that, well, there is content that is in Fabric, but not all of that content in Fabric is technically Fabric content, right? And then, we were looking at this page where it's like Microsoft OneLake provides open access to all of your Fabric items. Well, apparently not everything is a Fabric item, as we saw, because we were working with data marts and we couldn't access them from the OneLake the way we could, like the data warehouse and the data lake, using Azure Gen 2 storage. And we'll get to that stuff too. This is probably going to be a pretty in-depth little video here. And so the at-scale 2 was the one where I created all the data marts, right? And as you can see, when I go into here, it's empty. So data marts aren't Fabric items, apparently. Maybe they will be in the future, but they aren't currently. And you also see none of my data sets appear here or anything like that. Any of like your classic Power BI content apparently are not Fabric items, which opens up a whole other can of questions and stuff, but we'll get to that here in a bit. So the other one I was using was this at-scale 3, and then this one I created a couple data warehouses, my customer dimension data warehouse, right? And it created, of course, it created all these staging stuff, and I had a date dimension data warehouse, my sales data warehouse. So, these all appear here. And so if I go into my customer dimension, so I get this file, system, tables, and warehouse system. Of course, stuff doesn't work, right? If I double click on system, I get an error, and it tells me that I'm not syncing properly or something like that. And so that's a fake error. We'll see what the real error is here a little bit later in the video. But if you go into like this files area, right, you can see that I have these 3 grids here, which is very helpful. These are actually the tables that are in my data warehouse. Now, which tables these correspond to, who knows? At least from looking at it from this perspective, I'll show you how you can figure that out a little bit later. And as you can see here, I have, just Parquet files. They're just sitting in there, right? So, and that's, so I got what I got 4 there. I've got this one has 19 items in it, and then this one has just the 1 item in it. Okay, so, well, I mean, so it's interesting to be able to peek behind the scenes. I'm not sure how useful this is, because there's a lot of restrictions around this where you can't edit stuff or sync or move stuff around, and it doesn't sync back up into the cloud, things like that. At least right now. That's according, if you read through the limitations and considerations, and there you go. Okay, so the interesting thing though, because the system doesn't work, tables, you go into tables, you get a DBO, and this actually has friendly names: dim customer, hooray, dim date, and dim geography. Those are the 3 tables that are in that data warehouse. I can confirm that. We click into here, and then see here, you can see that the dim customer table apparently corresponds to the API or the GUID 6D6A6, right? We jump into there, we've got our 19 files, versus if we go back here to dim date, that one's the 4F19, and that was our 4 files that we have right there. And then dim geography, again, we go into here, and we got our 1 file. So that's the dim geography is just the 1 file. So that's how we can kind of figure out what those GUIDs mean from a file perspective, which will become important here a little bit later when I show you some more stuff. So let's go back up to here. Then we have warehouse system. I haven't really found much useful in here. I'm not Microsoft Fabric. I'm assuming that's what MF stands for, and not something else. Um, so, but again, we just have our 4 folders, and this is a type file. And I'll show you where these things come into play. But bottom line is, from what I can tell, the only things that count as Fabric items are basically lake houses and data warehouses, and things that can be essentially represented in Delta Lake format, if you will. Because if we boil it down to brass tacks, OneLake's is, you boil it down, it's just a Delta Lake. And Delta Lakes have been around for, well, I mean, Microsoft probably say it released an Apache Spark in like 2001 or something like that. Um, but Delta Lake's been around since like 2019 is when I first started hearing about it from Databricks and things like that. So it's been a while. It's not rocket science here. So what you would actually do with again, other than to be able to peek behind the scenes and figure out what GUIDs go with what tables, I'm not sure what else you would really do with this tool. But it is kind of neat to be able to like kind of look under the hood of what is out there in OneLake and really answer the question. To me, it's the most useful part is it just validates what I said. That not everything's Fabric. Um, how to describe it? Like Fabric. My best analogy I could come up with um, is like cheap furniture. Yeah, see, you buy cheap furniture, right? And it looks like it's all one piece of wood, but really it's just like a thin veneer, on top of like particle board or chipboard. That's just random bits of wood that are glued together, right? Um, and that's my best analogy for Fabric, right? The thin veneer that's on top is the UI within Power BI. That's the veneer. Underneath it is just a bunch of random crap that's like glued together and stuck together, right? Which, I think the real problem with it is that Microsoft kind of bills it and promotes it and markets it like it's like this high-end, solid piece of wood, Amish built furniture. When really it's like, go down to your value city and buy some cheap furniture, and that's really what's going on under the hood. And I think this validates that to a large degree because you have Fabric as this one thing. It looks like one thing in the UI, but under the hood, it's two very different things. It's Power BI content and it's Synapse content essentially. So take that for what it's worth. All right, so where can you kind of run in? So there's some more problems with this that this helps solve because let's take a look at this from. So here is my customer data warehouse that we're just taking a look at within OneLake. And you can see I've got a customer dim customer, dim date, dim geography. Those are the 3 tables that are very clear from when you go into the table view. So yeah, so okay, so but you really there's no indication here that I could see. Maybe if I go to properties, maybe URL, does it have the GUID? Doesn't have the GUID. 80. Does this have the GUID? At scale. No, this doesn't have the GUID either. I couldn't find really anything that would show me the GUID for the customer table within OneLake, at least within the Power BI UI anywhere. So I'm not sure how you're supposed to figure that out necessarily, although there are 2 ways. One is Data Lake File Explorer, and then there's another way that I'll show you here in a minute. But where you can get yourself into trouble with this is if I go into Fabric Hot Mess, I really want to go here. So when I created this query, I pointed it to my customer data warehouse. I had to stitch together this URL, right, from grabbing the GUIDs out of the browser, and that's my workspace. And then this last GUID here is the item ID for my customer data warehouse. Okay, so and you can see I used file system view. And you're like, Greg, well, why did you use file system view? Well, you'll see in a minute. But the issue comes in is that when you start going down, and I expanded attributes to see kind of what was going on in here and things like that. But you sort filter the. Oh yeah, so I filtered the rows out because if you notice, I'll go back here, Greg. So if you notice, it's just grabbing the files, and there's JSON files that are in there. So there's not just the Parquet files, but the JSON files, and then the files of type file apparently. Which are these 3 down here. And this is more like metadata model stuff, from what I can tell. Okay, so you got to filter those out, right? If you're trying to just grab the data that's within, sitting there in OneLake. The problem is that it's all the files, right? So it's all the files from all the tables. You can see once I filter the rows down, I've got 24 rows. Well, 19 in my customer, table, 4 in my date dimension table, and then 1 from a geography table. If I do the math right, that's 24. Okay, so so how do you, if you just want the custom, and the problem that came out is that if I go to the last row here, you can see I've got like English day, name, week, Spanish, French. So it's my date dimension is what it pulled in as far as the table, and that's just because the sample file it shows happened to be, I'm assuming is a date dimension table or file, Parquet file. Okay, so well, if you just wanted, but what if I don't want the date stuff, right? Because basically it's trying to do transforms on the non-date files, and it's those fail, and so it comes back with I just get the date ones. So what if I wanted my customer stuff? Well, how do I understand what that is? So if we go back up here to filtered rows, we scroll all the way to the end, we get this handy folder path, which is okay, great folder path, except it's got GUIDs in it. Right? So it's 66A609. Add that one is my customer table because I know that through like looking at it from OneLake. But if I click on some of these other ones, yeah, there's a 4F. So that's a date dimension. I'll probably never find the geography one, but just by clicking around. But it's in here somewhere. I'm pretty sure of that. Well, here we could just do this. This is well. Fabric, 8D, 8. Yeah, that's wow. Okay, it scrolls off the screen, so who knows? But anyway, you could probably figure it out by randomly clicking some of those filters off or whatever. But how do we do this in like if we really want to get this data? You know, one way is the OneLake File Explorer. The other way, if I go to new source and go to more, and there is no, and of course, there's probably going to be a OneLake connector that comes out that's going to solve this problem. There isn't one today. So I can go to Azure. I can go to Data Lake Gen 2 storage, say connect. I can paste in that GUID for my customer data warehouse. And let's go ahead and use CDM folder view, which is also in beta. I don't know why they're not using preview. They use beta for connectors. And so then if we look at, so if I go to from a file, so this is very similar. You can see that what's coming back in my OneLake, right, is basically the same thing. Go into here, files. So you can see that's really, this is like the CDM view, if you will, for, that's what the OneLake File Explorer is kind of bringing back, which makes sense. So there's my date dimension. There's my customer, and then this must be my geography, the D6. The problem is it doesn't work. Of course not. So I can click on stuff all day long, but the OK button never shows up. And that's, if I go to tables, this is the other way to figure out what thing goes with what. So I can drill down into my dim customer, and there's my Dutch log, and there's my 66. So now, but again, I can click on this stuff, and nothing works. So don't use the CDM view with the with the data lake connector, the Azure Gen 2 connector, and trying to use the OneLake path or anything like that. So that's the other way that you can figure out like what the GUID goes with what table and that sort of stuff. Again, that'll probably be fixed, but just like everything else, stuff doesn't work. It just doesn't work. Flat out doesn't work. And it's been in preview for public preview for 6 months. And it didn't work then. It still doesn't work. It's supremely frustrating. I can't imagine, having to try to blog about how great this stuff is. Because my personal advice, and take this for what it's worth, put a pin in Fabric, man. Just put a pin in it for like the next 6 months, right? At least, and just forget it even exists. Because again, public preview, and it's this bad. Just all around, just stuff does not work. I can't, it's going to take, and it's not like it's really improved in those 6 months. Again, like the one thing that I saw that like worked fairly well is, they fixed relationship detection. So they're working on it, I guess. And I just don't know if they're just incapable or just unwilling to like do it correctly and fix it. Um, I don't know. But I mean, I would call it at least 6 months. Give it 6 months. Maybe it'll be working by then. But then at that point, it's just a release one product, and you never use a release one product. You always wait for the next release, which means you're at least another year out. So like maybe in a year and a half, it'll be something. Maybe. I don't know. You'll have to see, but yeah, it's a slow grind, man. It's not good. So anyway, that's all I had for this video. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll talk to you next time.